everyone, welcome to my channel, HFY Beyond Terra. This channel is all about HFY and sci-fi stories. Now, let's start the story.
Kalara of House Valoran stood beneath the vaulted ceiling of the grand chamber and read the room the way she'd read a battlefield. Posture, breath, the flicker of satisfaction someone tried not to show. The council's faces wore the same expression, carefully arranged sympathy with a bright seam of relief underneath. They had made their decision long before she entered. High Chancellor Vex leaned forward as if delivering a sacred duty. Instead of a sentence, "Princess Kalara," he said, slow and precise, "you understand what is being requested." Kalara kept her chin level. "Say it plainly. The Terran Coalition has asked for a bride of royal blood to formalize the alliance. To their customs, it is symbolic, binding." Vex's eyes narrowed with performative gravity. "We have chosen you." Chosen. The word landed like a shard of ice. 3 years earlier, the medical priests had scanned her genetic lines, spoken in low voices, and finally pronounced the verdict the way one pronounces a death. Barren, unfit, a royal branch that would not bear fruit. In Valoran society, heirs were not simply children. They were proof of worth. Lineage was currency. Fertility was rank. Everything else victories, treaties, honor was decoration. Kalara had decorated their empire. She'd led fleets through, contested nebulae, and walked into enemy courts without a guard. She'd negotiated peace between houses that had spent generations trying to erase one another. She spoke 12 languages and could disarm an attacker faster than most could draw breath. It hadn't mattered. She had been measured once, found lacking, and quietly shelved. Now the shelf had opened, and the council wanted to ship her away. "I will comply," she said, because defiance here was wasted motion. Her violet skin, betraying her despite training and pride, darkened with heat. A young council member, Lord Tyran, snorted, unable to contain himself. "Humans won't know the difference. They're crude. Give them a princess-shaped gift, and they'll clap." Several others laughed, soft and poisonous. Kalara's hands tightened at her sides, nails pressing into her palms. She kept her face still. She had learned, over years of politics, that anger was food for those who enjoyed starving you. Vex slid a tablet across the table. "Commander Jacob Morrison," Jake, as they shorten it. A military leader, highly decorated. Their government values him. On the screen, a human male stared back, close-cropped brown hair, eyes the color of glacial water. A face set in the calm neutrality of a soldier, not handsome by Valoran standards, not ugly either, just steady. "When do I depart?" Kalara asked. 3 days. Vex waved a hand as if dismissing a servant. "Prepare yourself. Be gracious. At least until we secure mineral concessions." Kalara rose, bowed with flawless courtesy, and walked out on legs that felt strangely weightless. In the corridor beyond the council's reach, her personal guard fell into step beside her. Commander Lissa had scars from battles Kalara remembered, in vivid detail, and a loyalty that didn't depend on bloodlines. "They're fools," Lissa said under her breath. "They're opportunists," Kalara replied. "They think they're solving two problems, satisfying humans and removing a defect from court." "You're not defective," Kalara's laugh was small and bitter. In our world, I am. They walked in silence until Lissa asked, quieter, "Do you know anything about this Morrison?" Kalara glanced down at the tablet. He's 30 to by Earth's calendar. Unmarried. No children listed. Tactical specialist. Close combat trained. Loyal, apparently. She tilted her head. He sounds like a Valoran minus the obsession. With breeding, Liz's mouth tightened. Humans don't exile their own for biology. We'll see, Kalara said, though the thought struck a nerve. What if they truly didn't? The 3 days became a blur of packing and farewell. There weren't many goodbyes to make. The palace had grown quiet around her since the priest's verdict. Like a room that empties when the music stops, she filled the time with study, human etiquette. Their many versions of respect, the shape of their humor, the ways they formed, bonds that were not written into contracts when the transport ship lifted from Valoria Prime. Kalara watched the planet shrink into a jewel of pale light. She felt no tears. Only a hard knot of determination. The ship's starbridge was smaller than she expected, crewed by both Valorans and humans. The human captain, Lisa Hayes, greeted her at the airlock with a firm clasp of hands. The gesture was simple, but it carried an equality Kalara wasn't used to. "Welcome aboard, Princess," Hayes said. 2 weeks to Earth. "Thank you, Captain," Kalara replied, "for your courtesy." Hayes's eyes flicked briefly over Kalara's formal robes and the insignia of royal blood. "I've met Commander Morrison," she said later, during a routine check-in. "He's decent. Straightforward. He won't treat you like cargo." Kalara hesitated. "My council calls your people primitive." Hayes laughed, warm and sharp. "We're new to the galactic stage, yes, but primitive, no." She leaned against the bulkhead. "We adapt. We bond fast. And we don't judge a person's value by their ability to reproduce." Those words landed deep in Kalara's chest, stirring something she didn't want to name. On the final night before Earth, sleep refused her. She stood at the observation pane as the blue-green sphere grew large and luminous. Wreathed in cloud. Beautiful, she thought, surprised by how true it felt. Tomorrow she would meet the man on the screen. Tomorrow she would become a diplomatic. Sacrifice wrapped in silk. Or something else. The Starbridge set down in Colorado Springs under clear daylight. Earth air hit Kalara in the lungs thicker, wetter, full of sharp, unfamiliar scents. She held herself steady and walked down the ramp with the practiced poise of someone who had faced artillery fire without flinching. Humans waited in a tidy formation. At the front stood Jake Morrison. He looked like his photo, but a live movement and presence changing everything. Alert without arrogance. The kind of soldier who didn't waste energy on unnecessary displays. His eyes widened briefly when he saw her violet skin and ridged Valoran features. Then he stepped forward and offered his hand. "Princess Kalara," he said, "welcome to Earth. I'm Jake Morrison." His grip was warm, firm, controlled. "Thank you for receiving me," Kalara replied, then watched his face for contempt. Instead, he smiled, slight and genuine. "Please, just Jake. If we're doing this, we should at least be honest with each other." The casualness startled her. A high-ranked Valoran male would never suggest informality with a royal woman deemed lesser. "Then call me Kalara," she said. Over the next hours he gave her a tour of the compound, training fields, research wings, the diplomatic center. He answered questions without patronizing her, didn't speak slowly as if she were dim, didn't flinch at her competence. In a garden bordered by pines and winter-dry grass, he stopped and looked at her with an expression that was more wary than judgmental. "I'll admit," Jake said, "when my superiors told me this was a marriage arrangement, I didn't know what to think. We don't really do this anymore, not in official terms, but you agreed," Kalara said. "Why?" He inhaled as if choosing words carefully. "Duty. The alliance matters." Then, softer, "and I've lived the military life. It's useful, meaningful, and most days lonely. The idea of a partner who understands service didn't sound like a punishment." Kalara studied him. "Even if your partner is alien, you're not a category," Jake said simply. "You're a person." The knot in her chest shifted. She forced herself to speak the truth the council expected to destroy her. "Among my people, fertility determines worth. I've been declared barren." Jake didn't recoil. He didn't even look surprised. For a moment, he was quiet, and Kalara felt the familiar drop of dread in her stomach. "Here it comes," she thought. Disgust, pity, calculation. Instead, Jake's jaw tightened. "Why would I reject you for that?" he asked, incredulous. "Kalara, I'm 32. I've never had kids. If I was desperate for biological heirs, I'd have made choices a long time ago." He gave a half shrug. "If we ever want a family, humans have options: adoption, surrogacy, tech. But that's for people who actually know each other, right? Now I'm more interested in who you are." Her eyes burned. She blinked hard, furious at her own weakness. Jake's voice roughened. "I'm angry your council treated you as disposable. They sent you here like a broken object to make trade deals. That says everything about them." Something in Kalara cracked open, an old seam held together by discipline and necessity. She turned her face away, refusing to let tears fall. Jake stepped closer, careful, giving her space. "Hey," he said quietly, "you're safe here. Nobody on this planet is going to measure your worth by your womb." 2 weeks later, they married under flags and ceremonial banners, a blend of Valoran, formal vows, and human promises of partnership. Representatives watched, cameras hovered, diplomats smiled for history. When Jake kissed her, human tradition, lightning shot through Kalara's body, sudden and impossible. She saw Jake's eyes widen too, as if he'd felt it. That night, they moved slowly, learning each other with patience rather than conquest. Jake treated intimacy like trust, earned, never taken. Afterward, Kalara lay in his arms and felt warmth pooling deep inside her, strange and steady. She told herself it was relief, acceptance, a bruise finally not being pressed. She slept for the first time in years without bracing for the next round. 3 months later, fatigue hit like gravity, then nausea. Her senses sharpened until the world seemed to loud, to sharp, to scented. Jake noticed and marched. her to a specialist as if confronting an enemy. Dr. Susan Palmer scanned Kalara, then froze mid-motion. Her professional mask slipped into awe. "Princess," Palmer said carefully, "when was your last Valoran fertility assessment?" "Before I left Valoria Prime," Kalara replied, dread rising again. "Why?" Palmer's smile shook with disbelief. "Because there's nothing wrong with you. You're pregnant." Kalara's vision blurred. "That's impossible. The priests assessed you within Valoran parameters," Palmer said, pulling up a holographic readout. "Human biology is unusually adaptable, and your body has accepted the genetic contribution." She zoomed in, then laughed softly, stunned. "Also, there are two." Kalara stared. "Two twins. About 12 weeks along." When Kalara stepped into the waiting area, Jake read her face and went pale. "What is it? What's wrong?" She swallowed. "I'm pregnant," she said. "We're having twins." Shock. Then joy detonated across Jake's features. He laughed, a sound so bright it startled the nurses, and pulled her into a fierce embrace. "Twins," he kept repeating, like a prayer he didn't know he believed in. Kalara shook in his arms, every emotion colliding: triumph, terror, rage at the council, gratitude for the man holding her like she mattered without condition. Word spread, as it always does. Earth's military hierarchy buzzed, then scientists, then media. And eventually, Valoria Prime, Chancellor Vex appeared on a communication screen, his posture stiff and eyes strained. "Princess Kalara, we have received reports of your condition." "My pregnancy," Kalara said coolly, one hand protectively on her abdomen. "This is unexpected," Vex managed. "I imagine it is," she replied, "considering you declared me worthless and sent me away as a joke." Vex's throat worked. "These children carry royal blood. They should return to Valoria Prime. They will remain with their parents," Jake said, voice like iron. "You do not understand Valoran succession. I understand you treated my wife like damaged property." Jake snapped. "You don't get to demand access now that you've decided she has value." The call ended in tension and threats, leaving Kalara trembling with exhaustion. Jake held her close. "Let them try," he murmured. "You're not alone anymore." The twins grew fast, hybrid physiology rewriting medical expectations. At 8 months, Kalara could barely move without support, joking grimly that she carried to warriors staging a rebellion. Inside her, labor was brutal, the medical team human, and Valoran specialists working side by side adjusted protocols in real time. Jake never left her, steady as a shield. Finally, to cries pierced the air, one after the other. 2 bundles were placed in Kalara's arms, a boy and a girl with violet-toned skin and startling blue eyes, perfectly formed, perfectly alive. "A boy and a girl," Dr. Palmer said, grinning through tears, "both healthy." Kalara stared down at them, breath hitching. The council had taken her dignity, her place, her future, so they thought. But here, in her arms, was living proof of their ignorance. "Alex," she whispered for the boy, "Maya for the girl." Names that sat easily in both languages. Jake kissed her forehead. "Alex and Maya Morrison," he said. making the choice plain. 9 months after Kalara had been sent away, she returned to Valoria Prime with her husband, her children, and an Earth diplomatic team that did not intend to let anyone rewrite history. The landing platform was crowded with nobles, officials, drones broadcasting across the planet. The council stood in ceremonial formation, faces taut with calculation. Chancellor Vex stepped forward. Princess Kalara, welcome home. Kalara's voice carried. May I present my husband, Commander Jake Morrison of Earth, and our children Alex and Maya Morrison. A ripple spread. Surname mattered. Ownership mattered. Allegiance mattered. Vex attempted to steer the conversation indoors, away from witnesses. Kalara refused. If you have something to say it here. The council spoke of recognition, of royal blood, of entitlement. Jake cut through it. You declared her defective. You shipped her off-world to hide your shame. And now you want to claim her children like trophies. Lord Turan tried to protest. Kalara stepped forward, eyes bright with fury that no longer needed to hide. For years I served Valoria with honor. I bled for it. I negotiated for it. But when your priests said I could not bear children, you erased every victory. She turned slightly, addressing not just the council, but the drones. You assumed humans would reject me. Instead, I found respect. I found love. I found a world that does not treat people as breeding stock. A hush fell then, shockingly. Applause began. Commander Lissa, standing among the crowd, clapped first, then staff, then younger nobles. The sound grew until it rolled across the platform like thunder. Vex bowed his head, expression cracking at the edges. Perhaps the council has been limited. Perhaps. Kalara agreed. Over the days that followed, Valoran society met. The twins with a mix of awe and unsettled fascination. Medical specialists marveled at their physiology. Ordinary citizens, those who'd been labeled unfit or lesser, came forward with their own stories, their own wounds. A movement started quietly, questions about the priest's authority, about the cruelty baked into the hierarchy. Lady Mora, a friend from Kalara's youth, arrived looking hollowed out by exile and shame. I was declared barren to Mora, confessed. I lost everything. Kalara took her hands. Then let's stop believing their verdicts are the universe. Jake, ever blunt, added, Earth has plenty of single officers willing to meet someone brilliant. Mora laughed, broken at first, then real. 6 months later, Kalara sat at a table that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. Human scientists, Valoran specialists, representatives of other species, all studying what the galaxy was only beginning to understand. Humans weren't just newcomers to space. They were biological wildcards, genetics flexible enough to bridge gaps no one thought bridgeable. It's not only DNA, Jake said during one meeting. Humans choose partnership by connection, not by breeding charts. That mindset matters. Kalara watched the room shift as ideas did what armies often couldn't. Break old empires from the inside. Alex and Maya grew fast and bright, speaking both languages, moving between worlds with the ease of children who had never been taught to fear difference. On their 2nd birthday, Maya tugged at a toy out of reach. frustration flashing across her face, and the object slid through the air into her hand. Without contact, silence. Then Jake exhaled. Did she just? She did, Kalara whispered. Or an alarm braided together. Tests revealed something stranger still. The twins' hybrid genes had awakened latent traits. Neither species expressed alone. A new kind of potential, which meant new danger, too. Interest turned sharp. Curiosity became greed in some corners of the galaxy. Kalara and Jake responded the way soldiers do when they recognize a threat. Boundaries, security, fierce clarity. Their children would not become experiments. They would not become weapons. 5 years after Kalara had been sent away, she stood once more before the Grand Council, this time with Alex and Maya at her side, lively, opinionated, unmistakably loved. 5 years ago, she said, you cast me out because you thought I could not give you what you wanted. You never imagined your standards were not universal. You never imagined you were wrong. She gestured toward her children. These two are a future you did not plan. They exist because your definitions were too small. Vex rose slowly. Princess, we acknowledge the harm we caused. We ask forgiveness. Kalara held his gaze. I forgive you, she said, and meant it more than she expected. But remember the lesson. Value people for who they are, not what they can produce. Judge worth by character, not genetics. Later, in private quarters that had once felt like a prison and now felt like a home, Kalara watched Alex build a tower, sometimes with hands, sometimes with a flicker of unseen force. Maya sat nearby with a book far beyond her age, brows knit. In concentration, Jake leaned close. Think they'll change the galaxy? Kalara smiled. Worn and tired and fierce all at once. They already have. And somewhere, far beyond Valoria Prime and Earth, old hierarchies began to crack because one discarded princess had refused to stay discarded, and because two children proved the universe was bigger than anyone's fear.